Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the TrustLine 101 workshop at the 2025 Thriving Families California and O&O Network Joint Virtual Conference. My name is Nick O'Dowd, Director of the TrustLine program here at the O&O Network. And today I will be presenting with my coworker Nova Nevermont and our partners at the Care Provider Management branch at CDSS. So the agenda for today, we'll start out by going over what TrustLine is and how it began. I'll pass it over to our partners at CPMB to talk about the Guardian database. Then I'll talk about submitting TrustLine applications. CPMB will continue on with the background check process. And then finally, we'll finish up with getting results and resources for TrustLine.
Hello everyone, my name is Nova and I'm the Public Education Coordinator for TrustLine at the Network office. And I will start us off with how TrustLine began. So how did TrustLine begin? It began with a Mother's Campaign for Children's Safety, which launched the state-run background check registry called TrustLine. So in the 1980s, a mom, Mary Beth Phillips, was finishing up a graduate class and her regular babysitter was unavailable. So she dropped off her child with a neighbor's nanny. When she came back home, she found that her daughter had been taken to Alta Bates Hospital in Berkeley and was partially paralyzed and in a coma. Her daughter, Elizabeth, was blinded for life, but she survived the shaking by the nanny and went on to become a gifted student, earning a PhD in philosophy. Today, Elizabeth is an incredible poet, songwriter, eloquent public speaker, and herself an advocate for children's causes. However, in the preceding trial, the nanny was convicted of felony child abuse, but was only given a fine, community service, and probation. The judge did not want to take away the nanny's right to earn a living and allowed the nanny to keep caring for children. There was no easy way for the next family to hire her to know what she had done to Elizabeth. So Mary Beth started on a mission to advocate for parents to be able to access a comprehensive background check for their child care providers. And this is how the TrustLine program began. So how did TrustLine then become a requirement in California for many people who work with children? Through Mary Beth's determination, she successfully garnered legislative support, community backing, and worked with the R&R agency in Oakland called Bananas to get legislation that would allow parents to get access to the same background check that child care providers who work in licensed child care centers have. So in this picture, you can see Art Agnes, who carried the first piece of legislation for TrustLine, along with one of his aides, and there's Mary Beth Phillips and Elizabeth with her guide dog. So after the initial legislation around TrustLine, there was an 18-month pilot program, which was launched in 5 counties in 1987, piloting the TrustLine program. And afterwards, there was a positive evaluation. So this confirmed the value of TrustLine. It was then recommended that TrustLine be used for license-exempt childcare providers. The TrustLine program evaluation was at the right time because it coincided with the introduction of the Federal Child Care and Development Block Grant in California. And that block grant required license-exempt childcare to be an option to be paid for by the state. And we wanted to require that these license-exempt childcare providers would get a background check. So in 1992, the California Department of Education programs, the block grant and alternative payment programs became required to use TrustLine. So then later on in 1994, the California Department of Social Services programs, these are now the agencies in California who are required to use TrustLine. So these include nanny agencies, transport escort services, which transport children across state lines, ancillary child care centers, which are the child care centers at places like gyms and shopping centers, and professional supervised visitation monitors who supervise visits with non-custodial parents. And also the California Public Utilities Commission have their own requirements for transporters of unaccompanied at that point children was called Title IV. So these are similar to known as Uber, Safe Drive Your Children to families, which is things like an after-school program. They were required to do the so Mary Beth Phillips advocacy except for grandparents, aunts, and uncles who are exempt and has made a powerful tool. And this has continued on, and to date there have been 14 pieces of legislation which are related to TrustLine. And that brings us up to and today, I will which is hand it over to our partners at CPMB, and they will talk to you a little bit about Guardian and what is Guardian and how it works.
Great. Thank you, Nova. Hello, everyone. My name is Henry Galan, and I am a training analyst here at the Department of Social Services, Care Provider Management Branch. I'm here today to share information about Guardian. We will also be presenting a little bit later more in-depth information about the background check process. So I'll first dive into the agenda of topics I'll be covering now. First is an introduction to who we are. Then we'll jump into what is Guardian. We'll then go into covering the programs that we support here at the Care Provider Management Branch. Then go over why providers fingerprint, their fingerprint submission, and the journey those fingerprints take to reach CDSS. Then we'll look at the Guardian relationship between CDSS and TrustLine. Who are we? We are the Department of Social Services under the Community Care Licensing Division and the Care Provider Management Branch. Our CPMB mission statement. The mission of the Care Provider Management Branch is to ensure and promote the health and safety of each person in community care. Through the Guardian Management System, we serve, aid, and protect the most vulnerable persons associated to our agencies and registries by processing background checks that meet all state and federal mandates in an equitable manner. We perform these background checks and store the results utilizing the Guardian system, which we go over in a bit. We analyze a high volume of workload that is ongoing, approximately 250,000 fingerprints annually. First topic is a quick overview covering what is Guardian. Guardian is the system CDSS implemented in January 2021 to assist with the management of background checks. It also assists with background check processing and result storage. It provides a secured web-based system which contains different portals for different user groups, agencies, applicants, and CDSS staff. So for example, CDSS staff has a specific portal or URL which we access to conduct our work. Agencies will access Guardian from a different portal or URL. Through a password-secured portal system, agencies can initiate and monitor the background process. They can do this for providers associated to their agency and can also manage the list of providers associated to them. Providers who possess an email address may create a Guardian account to receive communication from CDSS. Additionally, providers can get background check result information and/or submit their exemption paperwork via the Guardian portal. Program support. At the Care Provider Management Branch, we utilize the Guardian to manage the background checks for various programs. TrustLine, Childcare, which licenses child care centers and family child care homes. Children's Residential, which licenses providers who care for children in out-of-care home. Adult and Senior Care, which licenses providers who care for seniors and adults over the age of 18 with mental, physical, or developmental disabilities. Home Care Services is a registry for home care aides to work independently or through a home care organization. The Administrator Certification Program, which certifies administrators for residential agencies. CDSS does the background checks for the programs, and all the background check information is housed in Guardian. As you can see, I have broken these programs into two groups. On the top, in the dark purple, are programs that child-oriented, whereas the bottom and the light purple are adult-oriented. Background checks requirements are different enough, between these two groups that the bottom three, focusing on adults, cannot be transferred to TrustLine. They would need to get fingerprinted for TrustLine. Why fingerprint? TrustLine statutory requirements. Per Health and Safety Code 1596.603, persons must submit fingerprints and a completed TrustLine application. Per Health and Safety Code 1596.607, A1, if the TrustLine applicant has been convicted of a crime, the department shall deny the application unless an exemption is granted. For TrustLine program, CPMB processes applications and the background check for CDSS and the California Department of Education, subsidized programs, ancillary daycare programs, foster care mentors, volunteers, child visitation monitors, and the bridge program applicants. Each applicant must submit fingerprints to the California Department of Justice via LifeScan office. The DOJ checks for in-state and arrest conviction information. The DOJ notifies the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who checks for federal, out-of-state arrest, and military offenses. And finally, the Child Abuse Central Index, CACI, received from the DOJ, is a name-based search of child abuse investigation reports. The fingerprint journey to CDSS. Here is a visual of what happens with those fingerprint results. Only when all results are received in the CPMB via the Guardian system, the background check can begin. Then Guardian does what is called an ARS check before the results are even viewed by an analyst. ARS stands for Administrative Action Record System. An administrative action is a negative action which results in the exclusion of an applicant to work, reside, or be present in a community care license agency. If the applicant is cleared through ARS, then results are routed to one of the following categories based on the responses. 1. Being cleared, meaning there is no record with DOJ, FBI, or CACI. 2. Error batch. This means that the fingerprint results arrive to CPMB with incorrect information and the fingerprint result is stuck. This may often occur if a mistake was put on a LifeScan form or the fingerprint operator made an error when entering the information in the LifeScan, in which case the applicant will show in Guardian as pending until someone, either the provider or the agency, follows up on the results. And 3. RAP received. RAP stands for Record of Arrests and Prosecutions. This is the result category that we'll be discussing in depth during our overview of the background check process a little bit later on. CDSS staff access Guardian to conduct and complete the background check process. Here are a few key functions we utilize for Guardian. We view the results of a background check, review RAP sheet information, arrest reports, and court records, review background checks correspondence submitted by the applicants, upload and enter TrustLine applications sent to CDSS for data entry, make exemption and investigation decisions, send notifications electronically and via USPS mail to applicants. Overall, CDSS uses Guardian to perform all background check processes. Guardian TrustLine relationship. The Resource and Referral Network is an organization and is your primary point of contact for TrustLine. And we have our image of the people there. The TrustLine registry is the registry or list for in-home child care providers, tutors, in-home counselors, and child care staff for ancillary child care centers who have passed a background check screening. So for any TrustLine registry, status information you contact the resource and referral network. And lastly, the Guardian software system is the tool to perform the background checks, which also houses the background check information for TrustLine applications. The main purpose is that Guardian is the tool that is used to support the TrustLine registry for the resource and referral network. Hopefully this visual helps with communication, that is distinction. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Henry. So now I will go over the process of submitting TrustLine applications. A few things to know before you get started submitting the application. One, if an applicant is already registered with TrustLine, they do not need to reapply. They just need to be associated to your agency. Also, if the person is not registered with TrustLine but has a background check clearance through childcare licensing, meaning if they've worked in a licensed childcare facility within the past 3 years, that background check clearance can transfer over to TrustLine. In order to do that, the individual will have to submit a new TrustLine application, but they will not need to submit a new set of fingerprints. Two, it is in legislation that in order to apply to TrustLine, an applicant must have either a state-issued driver's license or ID or a permanent resident card. The driver's license or state ID can be from any of the 50 states within the US, but we do not accept international driver's license or IDs. Or again, the other option would be a permanent resident card. This is in legislation, so we've thought about potentially trying to open that up in the future, pursuing a change to that legislation, but it's not something that's currently in the works. So for now, one of those forms of ID is required for someone to apply to TrustLine. And three, if the applicant has any sort of criminal history in their background going back to the age of 18, it will cause a delay in getting the results, which we will discuss here in a little bit. So as I mentioned before, please make sure that the TrustLine application is completely filled out. We have a copy of that shown for you here with the required fields highlighted. So, the applicant must put their name, their date of birth, their ID or driver's license number, their address. Again, make sure your agency information, like your agency ID number, whether it's stage 1, stage 2, etc., is checked off. And then again, ensure that the applicant has completed the out-of-state disclosure and signed and dated the application. If any of these things are missing and the application gets sent in to CDSS, that's going to cause delays in application, as the application cannot be processed without that information. Okay, so now I'm going to go over the application submission process in Guardian. Right, and before we get started, I want to note that there are a few different ways that this can be done. Guardian is pretty flexible and allows you some different workflows of how to process applications. Main two ways you can do it have to do with whether the application gets submitted into Guardian before the applicant fingerprints, or if you have the applicant take the 9163G and submit applications before anything gets entered into Guardian. And there are pros and cons of both. One, if you submit the application into Guardian first, it will generate a pre-populated live scan form for the applicant that they can take to get their fingerprint scanned, and that application will be all printed out, so it won't have anyone's handwriting, which makes it more legible for the live scan technicians to get all the information correct. But also, we know that from experience talking with a lot of you agencies and knowing how the process works, that we think it may be easier for you all to provide the TrustLine application to the applicant first, that paper 9163G application, have them fill it out in fingerprint all at once, and then bring it back to you where you can go in and complete the submission process. It seems to be just a little less back and forth between your agencies and the applicant. But again, I want to stress that whichever way works best for your agency, whatever is easiest for you is what we encourage, right? You know how your agency works, you know it's going to work best for you. So today I'm going to go over the model of, again, handing out the paper application, having the applicant fingerprint before anything gets submitted to Guardian. But if you'd like to know, how the other process works as well, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to go over, all the different options for you so you can decide what is going to work best for you all. Here is a step-by-step process, again, going through the fingerprint first model of how that would work for your agency. So again, step one, you're going to hand out the TrustLine 9163G application form to the applicant, right? The applicant will fill out that application with all their information and take it with them to the live scan vendor to get their fingerprints scanned. Once the fingerprints are done, the applicant is going to return that application back to you at the agency where you can finish the submission in Guardian. So when the fingerprints are done first, before anything has been submitted into Guardian, just those fingerprints alone are going to trigger an application to be started for that individual in Guardian. So again, just from the fingerprints being done, it will take at least a day to come through, but at least a day after they get fingerprinted, you should see an application for that individual in Guardian already, but it'll be in a not yet submitted status. And so then what you will do as the agency when you log into Guardian, you'll locate that not yet submitted application, resume it, finish the data entry, and submit the application. And then finally, once the results come in, you'll receive a letter from us at the network letting you know whether that applicant was registered with TrustLine or whether they were closed or denied. So again, the other process of submitting the applications into Guardian first before fingerprinting is also an option. And again, you can reach out to me for more information on that. Also note that instead of logging into Guardian and submitting and uploading the applications online through the Guardian portal, you can also just email those applications directly to CDSS and they will go ahead and do the application submission for you. And finally, in most cases, if the person does become registered with TrustLine, you will be able to access a registry approval letter directly from Guardian. Again, we will also send you out the letters when the results come in, but you do have the ability to access a registry approval letter directly from Guardian yourselves as well. Okay, so now we'll go over the process of submitting in Guardian. So again, this is assuming that you have already handed out the application to the applicant. They fill it out, got their fingerprint scanned, and now they've returned it to you at the agency, and you're going to go into Guardian and submit that application. So you log into Guardian. One thing you'll notice is there is a dashboard right on the homepage of Guardian, and not yet submitted applications is one of the things that is shown there on that dashboard and gives you easy access to look at any applications, again, that have been started that are in this not yet submitted status, right? So you can access those applications directly from the dashboard, but also you can see through the applications menu at that tab there at the top, you can go straight to the not yet submitted page. One thing to note is, knowing that the person got fingerprinted already, they should have an application in there that is not yet submitted. If you are not able to find that, I would say stop right there and contact us at the network for assistance, because we don't want you to create a what we call separate duplicate profile for this person or a separate application that's not connected to those fingerprints. So if you don't find the application started by the fingerprints, again, please pause there and contact the TrustLine team at the network office. So once you're on the not yet submitted page, again, hopefully you should be able to find the application you're looking for listed there. You'll see all the way in the very right-hand column that says actions, there's a button to resume that application. So you'll go ahead and click that button to resume. And that will pull up the application. So the first page of the application will be the applicant's personal and demographic information. And again, essentially you're basically copying the information that they filled out on the paper application and putting it into Guardian. You'll note that the required fields are marked by a red asterisk, so any field with the red asterisk must be filled in. Otherwise, Guardian won't let you continue on to the next page. And then anything without that red asterisk is optional and can be left blank. At the bottom of the first page of the application here in Guardian, you'll notice that the field for the applicant's email address is a required field, right? It's marked with that red asterisk. However, an applicant does not necessarily have to have an email address to apply to TrustLine. So if you have the applicant's email address, great, go ahead and fill that in. However, if they do not provide an email address or don't have an email address, you can enter the email address of unknown@unknown.com as a placeholder to get around that required field. However, please try to strictly keep that unknown@unknown.com specifically as kind of the placeholder email that you use when trying to get around the email field in Guardian. Okay, so the second page of the application here in Guardian is where you will put in your agency and the case information. So you should be able to find your agency and select your agency from the drop-down menu there. You will then have to also select the request type. So in Guardian, there are two options to select for request type. Basically, there's one for the initial application and one that doesn't say initial. So the difference between the two request types is if the applicant is not already registered with TrustLine. So they're not already registered, they're applying to become registered, then you'll want to select the request type that says initial. The other option, the non-initial request type, that is used when someone is already registered with TrustLine, but maybe they're not connected to your agency. And so you're just submitting an application to make sure someone who's already registered with TrustLine gets associated or linked to your agency so you're able to access the results. But otherwise, again, if they're not already registered, you want to make sure that you choose the initial request type. You'll also put in the position or the program. Again, stage 1, stage 2, bridge. So drop-down menu, you'll just select the position that applies to that applicant. And then it'll also ask for case number. Now, again, this is also a case where the red asterisk is there, and so that case number field is required to be completed in Guardian. However, case number is not required for someone to apply. So if your agency uses case numbers to help identify a particular case, great, go ahead and input that case number here. If your agency does not use case numbers, you can go ahead and put in NA for not applicable to skip that field. And then you'll notice on the right-hand side here, that right column, that is not required either. That is to add an additional agency. So I know that some of your agencies work together with other agencies, like maybe the R&R and the AP are two separate agencies or two separate departments within the same agency that each have their own TrustLine number, right? And each need to be notified of the person's results, the applicant's results separately. So if there is a second agency that needs to be notified of the person's results in addition to yours, you would put in that second agency's ID number, and that will also link their agency or that department, to this individual's TrustLine application as well. And again, that should be on the paper TLR 9163G application in box 13. So you should be able to look at the application and again, kind of just copy the information into Guardian. So if that additional agency ID number is listed on the paper application, go ahead and put it into Guardian. If it's left blank, you don't have to enter an additional agency in Guardian. The third page of the application in Guardian will be the applicant's identity document information. So remember that a person must have a state-issued ID, driver's license, or a permanent resident card to apply to TrustLine. Now, you'll notice in Guardian that there are more options listed in that document drop-down menu. However, specifically for TrustLine, again, they must have one of those specific forms of ID to apply. So you'll select what type of ID it is. You'll need to put in the issuing state or authority, and then finally enter that ID or driver's license number. You'll notice that you can also put in the expiration date or upload a copy of the ID or driver's license. Those two things are not required. Again, you only need to enter the required fields of selecting the type of ID, putting the issuing state or authority, and then also the ID or driver's license number, and then you can continue on to the next page. You'll get to the research registries page here, which you should be able to just click next and continue right through. There's nothing that you need to do here. However, note that if it does not allow you to continue on to the next page, if that next button is grayed out and it won't let you move forward, that typically means that the incorrect request type has been selected, right? Thinking about that second page of the application where you put in your agency information and the request type. So if you select the correct request type on that page, whether it's initial or non-initial, again, you should be able to just go right through this page. If you're not allowed to go through this research registries page, you'll maybe go back, change the request type, and then see if it will let you go through. That usually solves the problem. But again, as long as everything's been done correctly up to this point, you should just be able to click next and go right through the research registries page. The next page would be where payment would be made, but because as subsidized agencies, subsidized applicants, there is no payment required. Again, you can just click next and continue straight on through this page. And then finally, you'll get to the last page here of the application. Basically, it just shows you all the information that you just provided, gives you a chance to review everything, make sure all the information is correct before you go ahead and submit. So you can go ahead and look everything over. If it looks okay, go ahead and submit. If you notice anything that needs to be edited, you can make those edits here before submitting. Okay, so then you should get the confirmation that the application was submitted. You'll see, that because in this case the applicant already submitted fingerprints, it'll say that, they do not require fingerprinting. So you should get this successful, again, application confirmation when the application is submitted. So one thing to note here in order to move on with the next step is the application number. You'll see that listed here highlighted at the top. So I would suggest that you, just copy this application number on your computer, copy it to your clipboard so you can paste it in when we get to the application administration page in the next step. Once the application has been submitted, we ask that you upload a copy of the applicant's completed TLO 9163G, right? The actual paper application that is signed and dated by the applicant. So CDSS has that, actual, again, signed copy for their records. So in order to do that, you'll need to go to the application administration page. So if you go to the applications tab again, you should see the drop-down menu and you'll see the application administration page. Go ahead and go to that page. That's where you can paste in that application ID number that we copied on the previous screen. And then that should take you, to that applicant's administration page. It'll show you their name and their date of birth so you can confirm that you're on the correct, applicant's page. And here on this screen, there's a few things you can do. One, you'll notice that there is an opt-out for the health and safety information communication. So us here at the R&R Network, we are planning to begin sending out emails to newly registered TrustLine applicants once a quarter for just the first year after they become registered. So they'll only get 4 emails from us total. They'll just have health and safety information, connect them to local resources, and provide them with other information about caring for children. So if the applicant does not want to receive those 4 emails from us and they check the box to opt out, you can also check that here to make sure they don't get those emails from us. Then you'll also see there's a button to upload a document, and that's where you will upload, the signed copy of that TLR 9163G application. So when you click that upload document button, a little pop-up window will appear that will allow you to select the document you would like to upload and then provide it a name as well, which you can name it whatever you like. But again, we ask that you upload the signed copy of the TLR 9163G for that applicant. And then finally, the extra step here, which is not a required step, but that is the applicant disclosure. So you'll notice on the TrustLine application, there are a few optional demographic questions. Again, those questions are not required. However, if the applicant did answer those questions, we ask that you put those into Guardian as well. So if you click that application disclosure link at the bottom, that will take you to a new page where you'll put in the application number, the applicant's last name, and their date of birth, and there you'll be able to complete those disclosure or optional demographic questions. Again, you'll just basically copy whatever the applicant completed in the TLR 9163G application and check those boxes here in the disclosure in Guardian. Now, one thing I want to mention is, so we know right now this flow is not the smoothest. The disclosure questions being on this separate application administration page, right? And that may change here in the near future. There is development being done in Guardian to where these disclosure questions may get moved directly into the regular application flow. So as you're just going through the regular pages of the application, these questions come up and you just answer them there, and they're not on this separate application administration page. So that is something that may be coming in the future. For sure, we will make sure to notify everyone if and when that does happen. For now, these disclosure questions are completed on the separate application administration page. So I just wanted to mention that, as I know that that development is in the works. Okay, so now I will pass it back over to CPMB to talk about the background check process.
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Griffith, and I am also a training analyst here at the Department of Social Services Care Provider Management Branch. We are now going to dive into background checks. In particular, we'll be going over the RAP received, which RAP stands for Record of Arrests and Prosecutions. We'll go over the result of those RAPs, which have either a non-exemptable crime. It could have just a conviction, which would launch the exemption process. It could also have an arrest without a conviction, which would launch the arrest-only process. A possible match in their child abuse background check could launch a CACI, or a child abuse investigation. And we have a little information about mistaken identities. And lastly, we'll share some information of how to get a hold of us. So we'll move forward with that. So when a RAP is received, it is reviewed. And the information on the RAP will tell us what the next step will be. There are different ways the information on the RAP can lead us. On the far left discusses that there are certain convictions which prohibit the Department of Social Services from processing an exemption. And these are known as non-exemptable crimes. If the RAP sheet has arrests and convictions on it, the applicant will most likely need an exemption, which is on the next box over, the exemption needed box. Then the next one over, the arrest without conviction investigation, is if the rap sheet has arrests without convictions, it may become a arrest only case. And finally, if the rap sheet contains a possible khaki match, it will need to go through the khaki investigative process. And I'm going to walk through each of these scenarios in the upcoming slides. And we're going to start with the non-exemptable conviction. So statute prohibits the Department of Social Services from granting an exemption for certain specified crimes. And there are approximately 60 non-exemptable crimes, and a rap with a non-exemptable conviction is given priority in our office. Some examples of non-exemptable crimes are murder, rape, robbery, remember that one, robbery, torture, and kidnapping. And then there's, 55 more crimes that fall on this list. So these aren't people you want representing your agency or taking care of our most vulnerable. The next box or area is the exemption needed because there are arrests and convictions on the applicant's rap sheet. And here are the steps of the exemption process. First step is the rap is received by the DOJ or FBI with convictions on it. The next step is a criminal record exemption needed letter is sent to the applicant. And on this letter, it lists the documents which will need to be submitted to us within 45 days. And these required documents are a written statement, verification or proof of completion of community services and counseling and maybe training of some sort, and 3 character references that need to be on a particular form that we include with the letter. And the exemption must be requested. And it's requested in the form of the required documents being submitted to go through the process. So they need to either email them in or upload them into the Guardian system or send them in. And that's all on the letter that we send out. And if the documents submitted are incomplete, an additional information needed letter or AIN letter will be sent describing what is missing. And the applicant has 10 days to respond to this AIN letter. And if a TrustLine applicant does not respond to the exemption needed letter or the AIN letter, their exemption will be denied. So it's very important to keep a current address with CPMB in the Guardian system. In fact, it's a requirement. So when all the required documents are received from the applicant, CPMB orders arrest reports and possibly even court documents from outside agencies. And this process may take several months even, depending on the backlog of the outside agencies and the process of ensuring the correct documents are received. And we cannot move forward in the process until we have a report for each conviction or a statement that the report has been purged. This is often when applicants or agencies reach out with questions. We strongly encourage that the exemption status questions go directly to their analyst via the inbox designated on the letter that we send out, because it can be time consuming. I know Nick mentioned earlier that if there is criminal information, it will delay results on the application. And this is where the delay comes from, right? When all the documents are received, the information is reviewed by an analyst And this may take some time as well. Some cases have over 300 pages of documentation for the analyst to review, depending on the number of convictions. And once all the documents are reviewed, a decision is made to either approve the exemption or deny the exemption. We'll go into that a little bit right here. So here is the criteria an analyst considers before making a decision on an exemption. So the first one is the type of crime. Was the crime against property, fraud, or vandalism, or was it against a person, like assault and battery? And what is the characteristic of the victim? Was it a vulnerable individual, such as a child or an elderly person? Was the crime victimless? And does the applicant display a pattern of criminal behavior? Meaning if there are 3 or more convictions for the same or similar crimes, we take a look at that. It's a pattern. Length of time since conviction. So how long has it been since their most recent conviction? And is the conviction a misdemeanor or felony? And is it violent or nonviolent? So it's a pretty big deal. Evidence of rehabilitation. What has the individual done since the conviction? Have they participated or completed court-ordered classes, pursued or completed education on their own? Things of that nature. And then we have honesty. Does the written statement they submit describe the arrest the same way as the arrest report narrative describes it? Is there any sense of accepting responsibility in the statement? Any sense of remorse? Then we have the client agency type. So what is the role and responsibilities of the applicant, and who is the applicant going to work with and for? And what is the potential of harm to clients? And ultimately, the risk of harm. Does the applicant pose a risk to the health and welfare of the child or children? This is a decision that our analysts do not take lightly. They make the tough decisions to keep our most valuable and vulnerable clients and children safe. So that goes through the evaluation criteria for an exemption. I hope that gives you a general understanding of what they're looking for when they're making a decision on an exemption. And at this point, the decision can go one of 2 ways. The exemption can be approved, and if it's approved, great, onward and upward. Notifications will be sent, and the status of eligible will be in Guardian. Or it can be denied, in which case the status would be not eligible in Guardian. Possible reasons for denial would be they did not meet the criteria for an exemption, or they did not respond to the exemption needed letter or request for an additional information letter. It's important to respond on time, as you can see. So now let's take a look at what happens when an applicant is denied. Here is the exemption denial process. So CPMB sends the notification of denial to the provider. The provider is given a 15-day appeal period if they disagree with it. The appeal can be something as simple as, I wish to appeal my denial, or if they have additional evidence to provide, they may also submit this information and evidence with their appeal. If appealed, their case will be reviewed by a case processing unit manager to review any information submitted with the appeal. And the case will be forwarded to the legal division for denial of TrustLine application or registry revocation if evidence doesn't justify a reconsideration of the denial. And just a note here, once the case goes to the legal, it is out of CPMB's hands. Legal's review of the denial is a lengthy process. And at this point, any questions the applicant may have regarding their case should be followed up with the legal division. They will have complete ownership of the case at that point. And okay, so we've gone over the first two areas a RAP received can go, the non-exemptable conviction and the exemption needed for convictions. Now we'll take a look at the arrest-only investigation. Arrest-only cases originate from a RAP indicating a referable arrest that did not result in a conviction. An arrest-only investigation is conducted for all dismissed or pending non-exemptable arrests and violent crimes. So that includes arrests that did not result in convictions and is for the crimes identified in statute that must be investigated, whether they get convicted or not. We look a little deeper, okay? So then the department investigates the referable arrest to determine if the applicant's conduct may pose a risk to the health and safety of clients in care. The investigation may result in a clearance of the arrest or further administrative action to deny or exclude the individual from being put on the TrustLine registry, or to revoke them from the registry if they're already on it. An example of a referable arrest that is from the non-exemptable list is this someone who gets arrested for robbery and is dismissed. Remember, we saw that earlier on the non-exemptable list. So we look into all of those. Next, we'll go over the CACI investigation, because we've already gone over the non-exemptable, the exemption needed, and the arrest only, and now we'll look at this last area. So the Child Abuse Central Index, or CACI, check must be completed prior to granting a clearance or an exemption. And if the results reveal a possible match from the DOJ, a CACI investigation is conducted. And a copy of the report from the Child Welfare Services Case Management System database is obtained. That's the first step in the CACI investigation. A specialized analyst evaluates the report for need of further investigation, and the case is either cleared or referred to the investigations branch for further investigation. So after the evaluation, if the report was thorough and no risk was found, the CACI possible match may be cleared by CPMB right there. If more information is needed to assess the risk, that's when it will be referred to our investigations branch for investigation. And CPMB will then be informed of the findings from the investigations branch once they complete the investigations. So that could be a little time consuming as well. So you see, all these things were based off the RAP sheet. So what if the RAP contains incorrect information? So here's what you can do. The individual is informed to contact the DOJ Records Department at 916-227-3835. The Department of Social Services, we cannot move forward or process the background check until this is taken care of, okay? And DOJ completes their process. So we really have no control over how long that takes, but it's definitely worth spending time on if you have something on your name that shouldn't be. So we have a lot of information on our website. Here is a link to our care provider management page. When you get there, you can find information about our background check process, as well as the full list of non-exemptable crimes. whatever you want to look into. And here is CPMB's contact information, including our telephone number with live operators from 8 to 12, our email address and mailing address. I know how much the Resource and Referral Network, they are very supportive, and I know you can always call them, but maybe we can be a backup if you should so need it. I appreciate your time and attention, and I'll now turn the presentation back over to Nick.
Thank you, Kim. Now I'm going to go over how you all get the results, notified of the results at your local agencies or access the results through Guardian. So us here at the network, we send out status letters every business day. So for anyone whose results came in, or if they had their status changed since the previous business day, we will send that letter to your agency. Typically, we email those out. We may still send them to you via regular mail if that's your preference, but if you'd like to change how you receive those letters, please contact us at the network and we can help you with that. In addition to the letters that we send you, you can also access the results directly through Guardian, and I'll talk more about that here in a minute. And then as far as the applicants themselves, CDSS will contact the applicants directly, their results or any other communication that's needed. And as always, feel free to contact us, the network or TrustLine team, either you as the agencies, or you can also refer the applicants themselves or the parents to contact us to check someone's status or request a registration letter. And now I will pass it over to Nova to go over TrustLine resources.
Thank you, Nick. Now that you have learned a lot of information about TrustLine, how it works, and how to submit applications, get results, we want to talk about how this background check is a resource for families in California. TrustLine is not just for licensed exempt providers getting paid through a subsidy program. It's also a resource for all families in California. And it's a resource for childcare providers like nannies and babysitters to help equip them in their careers. So we want to share how you can promote TrustLine to families in your communities. So when you're sharing about TrustLine background check, we have our website set up for outreach to the public, and this is to provide a lot of information and resources about TrustLine. There are also many other resources for families in their search for childcare. It tells them how to connect to their local R&R, and there's resources for childcare providers. Some things that we have spoken about here today are on the website: the history of TrustLine, how it began, the legislation of TrustLine, step-by-step how to apply, but this would be for, like I said, the fee-paying or public side. So it would be, nannies or babysitters or families that are not getting subsidy. They have the step-by-step how to apply on our website. So this is a great place to send people who are looking for information about TrustLine. And in addition to TrustLine being a helpful resource to share with parents, it is actually in legislation that R&Rs help with the promotion of TrustLine. It's kind of up to us at the network to set you up with the resources and the ability to do that. You can contact us for promotional supplies. So we have flyers in English, Spanish, and Chinese traditional. We are also happy to join you if you are participating in any community outreach events. So we want to, join to help get the word out about TrustLine. One thing is this may be location dependent, and it might depend on what staff resources we have available at the time. But we are looking to get out into community more, so you can please contact us and see if this is something that we would be able to collaborate with you on. We encourage you to follow, like, and share TrustLine information on our Facebook page. And if you are interested in finding out more about TrustLine promotion, you can contact me, and my email is there. So I just want to put up our contact information. Here's where you can contact us at TrustLine in general, we have both a phone line and an email address that we answer every business day, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we are here to help you with technical assistance, any questions you may have, getting the results, those promotional materials I was just speaking about. So anything at all, we are here to assist you. So we just want to thank you for your attention from everyone here at Network and CPMB. I hope you learned a lot today on today's presentation. Thank you again for watching our TrustLine Background Check 101 at the Joint R&R Network Thriving Families Conference of 2025.